It's 1944. A cold wind sweeps across the French countryside. In the dark of night, under a silent moon, dozens of American tanks line the fields. Engines rumbling, soldiers moving, radios buzzing with coded chatter. From above, German reconnaissance aircraft snap photographs and rush back to report. Massive American division sighted near the river, they say. But the truth? Not a single real tank exists there. Everything the Germans saw was fake. The tanks were made of rubber. The sounds were recordings. The soldiers, artists, designers, sound engineers, pretending to be an army. This was the Ghost Army, one of the strangest, smartest, and least known units of World War II. An army built entirely on illusion. The Ghost Army's official name was the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, activated in January 1944. Its mission was unlike any other, to deceive, distract, and mislead the enemy. While the rest of the Allied forces fought with guns, these men fought with imagination. They were America's artists of deception, over 100 men trained not to destroy, but to create illusions so convincing that even Hitler's generals would believe them. They carried paintbrushes, microphones, and inflatable rubber tanks, not rifles or grenades, and yet their actions saved tens of thousands of lives. The Ghost Army was divided into 3 secret sections. First, the Visual Deception Unit, responsible for the sights of war, inflatable tanks, trucks, artillery, even fake airplanes. Second, the Sonic Deception Unit, who crafted soundscapes of battle, tank engines, troop movements, construction noises, recorded and remixed to sound like a full division on the move. And third, the Radio Deception Unit, who imitated the encrypted radio signals of real divisions, sending false traffic to German intelligence. Each part worked together to create what looked and sounded like a real army. Only it wasn't. They would roll into an empty field, inflate 300 rubber tanks, set up tents, cook fake meals, drive trucks in circles to leave tire tracks, and broadcast convincing chatter across open frequencies. From above, it looked like a full US armored division had arrived. From the ground, it sounded like one too. The idea of deception in warfare wasn't new. Ancient generals had used wooden horses and fake fires, but never before had deception been executed on this scale, backed by Hollywood-level creativity and cutting-edge audio technology. The US Army's top brass knew that confusing the enemy could be just as powerful as defeating them. And so they recruited artists from some of America's best art schools. Yale, Pratt Cooper Union, men who could paint, sculpt, build, and think creatively. Among them were names that would later become legends. Fashion designer Bill Blass, painter Ellsworth Kelly, and photographer Art Kane. Together, they would become the invisible actors of World War II. Their first test came after D-Day, during the Allied push through France in the summer of 1944. The mission, to divert German forces away from the real army's advance. They set up fake tanks near the town of Brest, broadcast fake radio messages, and played sound effects of tanks and troops for miles. It worked. The Germans diverted forces to face an army that didn't exist, and the real troops advanced with fewer casualties. Their most ambitious operation came in March 1945, Operation Viersen, the crossing of the Rhine River. The real Ninth Army was preparing to cross north of the town, but the Ghost Army needed to make the Germans believe the attack was coming from the south. For days, the Ghost Army worked non-stop. They inflated over 600 fake tanks and trucks, built fake bridges, even placed dummy artillery along the riverbank. Their sound crews blasted recordings of tanks rumbling and bulldozers moving. The radio team filled the air with chatter about preparing to cross at dawn. From the German side, it was clear a massive American force was gathering. They shifted their defenses south, exactly what the Allies wanted. Then, under cover of night, the real Ninth Army crossed the Rhine miles away, almost unopposed. The deception had worked flawlessly. Historians later called it one of the most brilliant tactical illusions of the war. But behind every illusion was real danger. The Ghost Army operated just a few miles from the front lines. If the Germans had discovered that their tanks were rubber and their soldiers were actors, they could have been slaughtered. One veteran recalled, "We were a bunch of artists armed with air compressors." Another said, "We could fool the enemy. But if they started shooting, we were in real trouble." And sometimes the shooting did start. In one mission in Luxembourg, German artillery discovered their location and opened fire. Several Ghost Army men were wounded, some killed. They died not holding weapons, but holding illusions. Beyond the battlefield, the Ghost Army had its own strange culture. They were soldiers, but also creators. When they weren't inflating tanks or running cables, they were sketching portraits, painting scenes of war and composing music. Their barracks walls were covered in drawings. Some called it the most talented platoon in the world. They had an odd sense of humor too. Sometimes they would label their fake tanks with sarcastic graffiti, Rubber Division, Air Corps, or Hitler's Nightmare. They knew that their job was absurd, and yet deadly serious. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Ghost Army was how meticulously they studied human behavior. If they were impersonating an armored division, they had to move, talk, and even drink like tank crews. When they set up fake headquarters in towns, soldiers would go into cafes, brag loudly about their upcoming attack, making sure enemy spies overheard. Every small detail mattered, because the smallest inconsistency could ruin the illusion. Their goal was simple: to make the enemy believe what they wanted them to believe. In total, the Ghost Army staged 22 full-scale deceptions between 1944 and 1945. They impersonated entire divisions, from the 2nd Armoured to the 6th Infantry. They fought across France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Germany, all without ever firing a real shot. And in doing so, they likely saved tens of thousands of Allied lives. Yet, after the war ended, their story disappeared. Everything they did was classified, buried under secrecy for more than 50 years. Even their families had no idea what they'd been doing in Europe. Only in 1996 were their operations declassified, and the world began to realize the scale of their genius. In 2013, PBS released a documentary titled The Ghost Army, bringing their hidden story into the light. And in 2022, the US Congress finally awarded the Ghost Army a Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest honors in the nation. The citation read, "For unique and highly distinguished service in conducting deception operations that saved countless lives." It took nearly 80 years for the world to fully recognize the artists who fought not with bullets. Image 10. Today, the Ghost Army stands as a symbol of creativity in the face of destruction, a reminder that even in the darkest times of war, the human mind can find brilliance. They were soldiers who painted illusions, built fake tanks and played recorded battles, but their impact was real. When the guns fell silent in 1945, the Ghost Army quietly disbanded. Their work faded into secrecy. No grand parades, no medals, no public recognition, but history remembers them now. As the invisible warriors who fooled Hitler's war machine, as the artists who turned imagination into a weapon, and as the men who proved that sometimes the best way to fight evil is to outsmart it. If you ever walk through the green fields of Europe, where the wind hums softly and the earth still remembers the war, you might just imagine them. A group of young artists crouched behind rubber tanks, painting shadows, setting up speakers, whispering into radios, creating a war that never really happened. That was the Ghost Army, the invisible heroes who won battles with nothing but art, sound, and courage.